I was interviewed this morning on Tennessee Valley Living, and it was so quick and so fast that there were a lot of things that I didn't get a chance to cover. So I thought I'd take this time to revisit and expand on some of the things that we covered briefly. First of all, what does it mean to be plant-based? Well, plant-based just simply means that you get the majority of your foods or you eat foods that come primarily from plant sources. That's not just fruits and vegetables, but seeds and nuts and whole grains and legumes and beans. So a good way to kind of think about it or remember it is that all vegans are plant-based, but not all plant-based folks are vegan. Plant-based individual, you may choose to consume some animal products. Why should you consider a plant-based diet? Well, I think people choose to follow a plant-based, or I like to think of it as a plant-forward diet or lifestyle, because you're leading with plants. So when you look at your plate, you're going to have more plant foods or foods from plant sources on your plate, and you're going to have a very minimal amount of animal-based products. But let's be very specific here. I'm talking primarily whole food, very minimally processed plants or plant products, because French fries are plant-based, but they are very highly processed and full of saturated fat and probably full of salt and sodium. So yes, they are arguably plant-based and they're even vegan, but not the healthiest choice. So that's kind of what we're focusing on here. One of the things to consider if you decide that you want to pursue a plant-based lifestyle is plant diversity. It's a good idea to try to eat a variety of plant sources or foods from plant sources, because the more variety, the more nutrients, phytonutrients, phytochemicals, polyphenols, those weird long scientific words, you're introducing into your gut microbiome. And that phrase is definitely very popular right now. We're talking about healthy gut versus leaky gut, and digestive issues, and how the gut-brain connection. There's so many things that the gut is responsible for. It controls, I think, 70 to 75% of our immune system. It controls serotonin production, which is your feel-good chemicals in your body. So it is very important to nurture your gut and to keep it healthy. Healthy gut can potentially prevent a host of illnesses. So let's talk a little bit about plant diversity. Think about this. 75% of the world's food comes from 12 plants and 5 animal sources. And I bet you can name off the top of your head what the top 3 or 4 plant sources are. They're wheat, corn, sugarcane, and rice. And those aren't, we shouldn't demonize those poor plants, but the way they're processed, they're primarily stripped of all their nutrients and fiber. A lot of plants potentially have a lot of good dietary fiber, but if it's stripped of it when they're being processed and broken down and added into our highly processed, candy bars or meal bars or cereal, then they're doing us no good. So, and the other thing with corn and wheat and rice, once it's stripped like that, and sugarcane, there's no protein. So that is something to really, really think about. Trying different plants, and there are a host of them, and you may think, oh well, I don't like this, or I don't want to try that, or I had a bad experience. Well, try something different. There are so many varieties of any plant out there, you name it. And you may find that if you try something new, you may like it, or maybe you just had it prepared in a way that wasn't seasoned well. And if you are willing to try it again, it could be something that is nurturing your gut and feeding your gut microbiome. So I would encourage you to do that. Plants are so good for us for a number of reasons. We know that they provide us with vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and prebiotics and probiotics. And so let's talk a little bit about prebiotics and dietary fiber. I think that's something that's really important to consider, especially when we're talking about the health of the gut. A lot of foods, there are certain plants that are very good prebiotics, and those are your members of the allium family, which is like your onions and garlic, leeks, fennel. Mushrooms are a good option there, asparagus and beets. And you may be thinking, oh, I don't like beets, or I don't even like mushrooms. I know most of my children do not like mushrooms. But there are so many other foods out there, and that's just a very partial list that I named, and I didn't even name any fruits in that list. Some fruits that contain prebiotics are things like white nectarines, watermelon, some dried fruits, and so apples are a good prebiotic. What's a prebiotic versus a probiotic? A prebiotic is simply, those are compounds, non-digestible compounds that are found in food that help to feed and nurture that gut microbiome. Probiotics are fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut that help us to digest our food. And we need both. And again, referring back to the importance of eating a very diverse amount of plants is, the more varieties that you eat, the more opportunities you have to bring those prebiotic dietary fibers, nutrients into your gut and to nurture your gut microbiome. I think Dr. Mark Hyman talks about, feeding your gut garden, if you will, thinking about that, coming into the spring season right now, everybody's outside and we're fertilizing or, nurturing and tending to gardens and flowers and plants. You need to think about your gut in the same way. You need to provide it with those nutrients constantly, so that it stays healthy and fortified. If you are fortified in your gut and your immune system is strong, hopefully if you do get sick, you recover quickly and or it doesn't take you down or get you down for a very long time. So that's really, the goal of that, because, it would be nice to never get ill. And so hopefully that's what happens. And it's so much easier to prevent illness, any type of illness, minor, serious, than it is to cure it. So that's really the thing that drives me personally, and hopefully is the motivation and encouragement for you or any of you out there that are considering adding more plants into your everyday diet. One of the questions that was asked during my interview is, what should we be eating, what's in season? And that's going to vary by area, but a good source for figuring out, there are websites and there are resources, but I would encourage you to turn to your local farmers market, your local farmers, your local growers. You may know somebody. I have a very good friend who is an extremely accomplished grower and lives fairly close to me. We're in the relatively same growing region. And so I follow her Instagram page, and so I know exactly what's in season. I've collaborated with a local farmers market, and I'm receiving their CSA box, which CSA just means community supported agriculture. And I've gotten some things that I've even never tried before. And I'm very adventurous when it comes to vegetables. But I'm gonna tell you a little secret. I actually am not wild about fruit. I eat fruit because I know that I should. And what's so interesting is my mother revealed to me that she was the same way. I really didn't know that. I knew there were certain fruits that she didn't like. She didn't like bananas. She didn't like watermelon. And I just thought, wow, that's weird. Everybody likes watermelon, especially in the South. But when she told me that, I thought, wow, that's so odd. But if you really don't have a palate or a taste for it, then it doesn't matter what type it is. So I eat it again because I know that I should. And one of the questions that was posed to me is, well, what if you just don't like ABC, XYZ? Well, I think, what's the alternative? My husband has this saying, pay me now or pay me later. And I take that to mean, well, you can skip all these good foods now, these foods that could potentially prevent you from getting sick. But what happens if you get sick later? So you may choose to skip it now, but you're going to pay for it later. And then that also goes to things like organic, and that's a whole nother video that I could talk about, organic versus non-organic. And there's only one little soapbox I'm going to get on when it comes to organic, and that is in regard to strawberries. The Environmental Working Group has come out with this year's list of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, and strawberries are on the list again. And unfortunately, they just retain a lot of pesticides. Normally, most pesticides can be washed or rinsed off prior to eating, or, some pesticides or chemicals are benign and don't cause a lot of harm. Ideally, you want to be as organic as possible, but from my very limited understanding of growing, I am not a gardener, I'm not a farmer. There are just some situations where things need to be treated, and, the goal is to treat them with natural, as least harmful as possible. But for some reason, strawberries are one of those things that are treated with a lot of chemicals, and chemicals that can potentially cause cancer, can disrupt your hormones. And that's scary. If you get your hormones out of whack, it takes a really long time to get that balanced out. So that's my only soapbox. I am never one to say shall or thou shalt not, except for when it comes to strawberries. Thou shalt always purchase organic strawberries. Please do that for me. So we're in April here in the Tennessee Valley in the Mid-South, and there are a number of foods that are in season right now. So let's talk a little bit about why you want to buy things that are in season. Out of season produce is harvested early so that it can be shipped and distributed to your local retailer. And if you buy produce when it's from your local suppliers, your local farmers markets, it's picked at the peak of freshness, and it just tastes better, it tastes fresher. And I've definitely witnessed that personally with the foods that have been in my CSA box. I've just been really amazed and pleasantly surprised. I'm eating collard greens raw, and which are delicious. Some studies out there that suggest that plants that are allowed to mature on their parent plant retain more of their nutrition. So, and then there's also kind of that community aspect of you're supporting a local business, you're supporting local farms. So another good reason to purchase from a local farm is it helps to preserve the land and open spaces in the community, helps them maintain the land. It definitely supports them if you purchase locally grown food, any type of food, but especially fresh produce. You're keeping those funds within the community, which is, enabling those funds to be recirculated through the community. And again, you know where your food is coming from. You literally can talk to your grower or your farmer and say, well, how did you make this? What are you using? Or how did you grow this, rather? And what are you using on this produce? So there's a number of great benefits to purchasing locally grown, produce. And again, you may look at it and think, oh wow, it's so expensive, it's not going to last as long, it goes bad quickly. That's good, and that's another tangent that I could go off on for a while, but I won't do that. Is you want foods that are breaking down quickly. They're supposed to break down and go bad and decay eventually. If stuff is staying fresh and whole and not breaking down, I would be very concerned about it, because my thought would be that it's got preservatives and chemicals. Basically, your food is embalmed and you don't want that. So, there are certain things that last longer than others, but you want fresh food that should be consumed quickly, and that I get that CSA, I snap my pictures, and then I'm immediately, trying to cook it and prepare it while it's fresh. And then when it runs out, it runs out. And I think that that is just such a concept that we're not used to. We're used to things lasting forever. We stick it on the shelf, or we stick it in the back of the refrigerator, and we kind of forget about it until we're ready for it. And that's really not the way that we should be eating. In other countries, people go to markets on a daily basis or every other day. And I realize and understand that that is not convenient for many of us. But if you can have, especially now, food delivery is just an everyday thing, and many CSAs, deliver the foods directly to your door. So as opposed to you having to go and pick it up. So at least mine does. So I don't know honestly what's going on in the rest of the country or the rest of the world. But that's maybe you have a friend that could go pick it up for you if you're not able to because you work or whatever. But again, it all comes down to that, the cost or the time. If you really just sit down and meditate and think about it, what are you gaining if you're spending a little bit more money and a little bit more time to bring fresh, minimally processed, locally grown, in season produce into your home. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. I hope this has been helpful. Feel free to comment. I'm certainly not an expert. I am a foodie. I love food. I love learning about food and sharing, what I've learned. And if there's any way that I can help you, there's so much information out there. Or maybe you're ready to start incorporating more plant-based foods into your life, or you've been advised that you need to change your diet, for whatever reason, or you simply just, want to do it for the betterment of the planet and for the animals. Whatever your reason, it really doesn't matter. If you've made the decision to go plant-based, and if there's any way that I can help you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. Thank you.